Hello. So this is my second podcast in English. I'm very much out of practice, but I hope I will deliver. My guest today is Mike Bodie. He's a talented voice actor, and I'm willing to find out more about you, your career, and your worldviews. Let's say. How what is it like to be a voice actor, an American voice actor working in Europe these days?
So I got into voice acting off the back of, I trained as an actor at a school called LAMDA, which is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. I applied for about 5 years to get in. It's very competitive. It's about 6,500 people applying for ostensibly 30 spots. And then when I graduated in 2013, a couple years after that, or maybe, about a year or two after I graduated, I was talking with a friend of mine, and he said, I don't want to have to struggle as an actor. And I said, well, you're going to have to do crappy black box theater for expenses only payment. And he said, yeah, I know, but I don't want to have to decide, do I eat or do I pay my heating? And so his point was to think, what are the skills that I have as an actor that I can use in a day job, which allows me to keep those skills active and also, make a living to support myself. So he ended up being a walking tour guide. So he had to use his voice outside with no microphone in front of large audiences, memorize large pieces of text, and be entertaining, which is basically theater. Like, there's just no roof because he's outside, unless it's an outdoor theater. And so I ended up looking into voiceover and motion capture because they interested me and they were close to stage and screen work. And they would obviously use the skills that I learned as an actor and in training. And so initially I found more success in voiceover. I found some success in motion capture and performance capture, and that's starting to slowly pick up over the last couple of years. But I found more success in voiceover. And so when I worked at my school, LAMDA, for a number of years as like a caretaker, kind of a janitor, if you will. And so I had a lot of downtime in between jobs, and so I had access to one of the school's computer, and so I was literally just like Googling, what is a microphone? How does it work? How do voice actors find jobs? Everything, every dumb question, every question that seems sort of like, why are you asking that? Like, what a microphone is. Yeah, I know, but how does it work? Which ones are good? Which brands are considered industry standard? Like, can I just buy some cabling off of Amazon, or can I find one that's really good, that has a better signal quality? Maybe it changes the sound that I record. All of that stuff, I just sort of absorbed everything that I could. I eventually had some voiceover reels made. And a voiceover reel is basically, it's a demonstration of your ability in certain types of work. So like commercial work or corporate or animation or video games. Yeah, it's like an audio portfolio of what you can do. Sometimes people make reels based off of the work that they've done. If you don't have work, then you essentially kind of simulate the sound of that work. And then you take those reels and you submit them to an agency or in some capacity, where you have an agent listen to what you're able to do in some way, and you either say, hey, look, I'm looking to be represented as a voice actor or a voiceover. I'd love for you to represent me, to help me find work, or however you make contact with that agent, and hope that they go, yeah, great, you're a great actor. I'd love to help develop your career and work with you. So I had some reels made while I was at drama school. They weren't that great. Like, I'd be happy to admit that. They were not very good. They weren't suited for what the industry was looking for. I redid my reels where I put like every accent that I could do on it, and I basically like copied a lot of famous commercials, which again was not useful because it was just sort of me doing accents as opposed to performing and acting, because as a voice actor, you are an actor of the voice. And so then I thought, you know what, I don't actually know what to do with a script for voiceover if you give it to me. Like, if you give me a script from a piece of theater, or you give me a film script, I know the process of going, what's the character thinking? What's going on? What's the scene? What are my lines? How can I sort of design how I want the scene to be shot for like a self-tape audition, or how do I want to stand or hold myself when I'm in the audition room for the stage play? With a piece of copy or a script for voiceover, if it was a commercial or e-learning or whatever, I had no idea what to do. And so I thought, you know what, I want to have the same level of confidence and knowledge that I do with a piece of theater or film or TV, but with a script for voiceover. So I ended up going and getting some voiceover training from a guy called Peter Warnock from the Voice Zone in the UK. And it was off the back of that training. It was about 20, 30 hours of training. That's kind of where my voiceover career started, because I got some baseline training of how to use a microphone, how to use my voice in front of a microphone, how to look at a script and break it apart, find all of the things about it that need to be delivered vocally and performed, and then do that. And so I got to a point probably about halfway through the training that I was doing, and I was like, you know what? This is terrible. I'm terrible. I can't speak. This is awful. Oh, well, voiceover's not going to work out. I'm just going to have to hope that I get an audition for a piece of theater, or maybe there's a piece of television that I can submit myself for, or whatever. I guess I'm never going to work in voiceover. And then one of the classes, it all just it worked. It just all dropped in. I went, now I get it. Now I understand. Like, I wasn't at the point that I am now, but I was kind of on the next step on that kind of journey of understanding and
So when did it click?
It was, I remember I was doing some script, and I suddenly decided to drop my voice down very low when I spoke. And so and then we played it back over the speakers, and I went, oh wow, that's kind of that's what I thought I was doing. I didn't know I was actually doing it. And so then I went, oh wait, okay. So I can change my voice in certain ways to modulate it and change it to create a different sound that's useful for the script. And then I started going, okay, well, here's a different script. How might I do that? Okay, I might play it more high energy, or I might speak faster, or I might speak slower, or whatever.
But weren't you trained for that at the college?
True, but if I speak the same way that I do on stage, but for a microphone, it's not going to work. It's too loud.
So what do you mean? You didn't get any specialization for voice acting in?
So
at
we had some training for like radio plays, but there's not that many radio plays that go on. I mean, there's a lot, but the pay for it is not all that great. It's a very specific form of voiceover work, where there is also other fields of voiceover work, which tends to be more common, pays better, and requires a different voiceover skill set. So I knew how to perform on stage, how to speak on stage. I knew how to perform for a camera, how to use my voice for cinema. But I didn't know how to use my voice and how to focus all of my sort of acting instincts for a microphone. Because on the microphone, it's not a camera. It's a microphone. You're not going to see me. You're not going to see how well I move my hands or the subtle facial expressions of cinema. I might have an instinct to do that, and I'm delivering visual information. I'm not delivering audio information. So I have to take all of those instincts as an actor, that maybe I want to have a certain expression on my face when I say a certain line. That instinct to do that, I have to translate that into an audio format. So I have to learn, how do I take my core acting skill and translate it just for somebody's ears? And so like stage, screen, voiceover, motion, and performance capture, they all require an acting skill. Like to act is necessary for all of them, but you have to format it into the different mediums that you're working in. If you give a stage performance on screen for camera, and the camera is like a foot away from you, and you decide to suddenly turn around and walk away because that's what your character would do on stage, it doesn't work for camera. So obviously that instinct as a stage actor is not going to work for that different medium. In the same way that if you're doing sort of quiet cinematic voice when you're speaking and using your eyes to act, somebody way back at the back of the theater, they can't see that. So all of that instinct to do cinematic acting, that's pointless because it doesn't fit the medium. So you have to adjust that acting skill for the medium that you're working in. So at one point during training, it all clicked, and I thought, oh wait, I can actually do this. So I kept doing the training. And eventually I had a new set of reels made, and I started sending those back out to the representation pipelines for agents. Eventually I got with one agent, and then about a year later I changed to another agent. And I've been with them for the last 5-6 years, which has been great. They're called Soho Voices. They're in London. They're a great team, and I'm very happy to be with them. And so I started doing more work from home. I was recording on a Rode NT2A with a Scarlett 2i2 second gen interface. And I was doing some small pieces of work in my closet. Literally, I stuck my microphone in the closet. I had my clothes hanging around it. I got two giant bits of door-sized wood panels, and I put them together lengthwise, and I put some hinges down the middle so that I could fold it and tuck it away. And then on the non-folded sides, I put acoustic paneling on there so I could then open it out and angle it so that I would have the acoustic paneling on the inside, and I could just take it away and put it somewhere else. So that became like sort of my studio, if you will. And then I had literally a duvet that I put over the clothing rail of my closet and then threw it above the top of this wood. So I had this kind of like acoustically treated space. And surprisingly, it worked really well. And then eventually I moved house. I was doing the same thing, and I was doing a lot more work in this space. And I was sweating so much because I had enclosed it so well, and I'm doing all of this kind of high energy acting on my equipment. And it's like, and I was having to constantly like shift myself around and hold myself in awkward positions to do the acting because I didn't want to touch any of the wall and make the sound and stuff. And it got to the point, I was lucky to have booked a campaign for Magnum Ice Cream in the US, which paid really, really well. So I saved as much money as I could from all the stuff that I did because I eventually wanted to buy a voiceover booth, but I thought, okay, I'll do that sometime in the future, but I'll just save the money. And eventually I went, you know what? I'm going all in. I got to do it. So I bought the booth. I went up to the factory in Yorkshire. They're a company called Cube Vocal. I went up to their factory. I looked at what they were making. I brought some of my equipment with me to test it. I spoke to the sales guy for like an hour, and they were out in the boonies in Yorkshire, so it took me a while to get there. So eventually I got there, and I tried out their booths. They had some acoustic treatment in there, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I can put some more in because I want a really nice dead sound. And then I went home and I thought about it.
Sorry, you said some really nice how?
Within voiceover studios and recording studios, the more acoustic treatment you have, you get what's called a dead sound. So you don't get any echo, any reverb. You don't get the sound of...
It's perfectly isolated.
It's perfectly isolated, yeah.
Okay.
So it's known as having a dead sound.
Okay.
So I wanted this sort of nice, dead, isolated sound. And so I came home, and a couple of days later, I went, right, I'm going to buy it. And it was, at the time, it was about £5,700. So it was like buying a car. In London, sort of a used old car. So it was a significant investment. So I went, okay, great, I'm going to do it. And about 18 months later, after I bought it, the work that I was able to do because I had it, the whole thing was paid off. So I was back at sort of net zero in that way. And so since then, I've been sort of upgrading it and making adjustments and here and there and kind of fine-tuning it. And it's now kind of like at its like ultimate state. It's definitely over 9,000 at this point. And it's kind of like sort of peaked now at the moment. So I do a lot of work from home, which is great.
Do you like working from home though?
Yeah, I do. I do also, I like working in studio as well. The main kind of thing that bugs me is mostly the travel. Like I'll have to travel from home to the studio, and I don't live in London, so it can be like an hour and a half traveling to get to the studio. Sometimes, sometimes like if I'm super tired and I got to get up, it's like, all right, I need to leave the house 2 hours before the session so I can get into town and go and do it, which is great. I always love coming into town to doing work, but because I live so far out of town, it's always like, there's no seat on the train. It's like, the tube in London is cramped and it's hot and sweaty. There's no air conditioning, and that's like the worst bit. But then obviously I get to go do work.
How much does tiredness affect your performance?
I've only had it affect my performance once, and it was actually about a month ago. I was doing a voiceover class that had a Los Angeles time zone start, so it was like an 8-hour difference. So the class started, I think, at 3 a.m. my time. And went till 6 a.m. So it's a 3-hour class. So I try to go to bed as early as I can and then get up at like 2 and then get up again at 2:30 and then go down to just quickly do a shot of giant coffee mug, get myself awake and go do the class. And so I'm high on all this caffeine and coffee, and I'm doing good work in the class, but then afterwards I just crash. And then it's like, right, I have a job at 9 o'clock. I can't sleep because I'm sort of like, I'm too tired to sleep. And I'm sort of also high on coffee as well. Not high, but like I've had a coffee and I'm kind of wired. And then I had to go in for a job, and it was a really kind of slow, like not particularly high energy job for a sort of a corporate client. So it was very kind of like this is the voiceover for the video that we're doing. There's not a whole lot of energy going on, but it is a little bit bright, and you have to keep saying the words consistently throughout. And then in between takes, I'm just like, okay, great. All right, let's go for another one. Okay, great. This is the second part of the video. Literally that. And I was like, by the end of it, I was in physical pain with how tired I was. But like, I had already signed up for the class. I'd already spent a couple $100s on it. And it's like, I don't want to be the guy that goes, oh, sorry, yeah, keep the money. I can't show up to class. I've got work tomorrow. It's like, nobody cares that I'm in a different time zone. Nobody cares that I'm tired doing the class. I volunteered to be there, so I better show up. No, I can't sort of ask for an excuse to go, oh, can I get a free pass because I'm a bit tired? It's like, no, you volunteered to be here. You paid the money. You better do good work. And if you got a job tomorrow, hey, great, you're working. You better find a way to make sure you do that job well. I did the job well, and nobody could really tell, but like I'm my own worst critic. So I'm thinking, oh man, I didn't give it 100%. And it was on the opening line of this job that we were doing that I knew it wasn't 100%. And I'm like, oh man, I feel like such a shitbag because I'm not doing like the best that I can for this job. And so then at the end of the job, I was a bit more awake. And so I said, hey, can we retake the opening line? Because I felt it was a little under-energized. They listened back to it, and they said, yeah, it is. And I said, yeah, we were just getting into it, just kind of warming up. It's fine. I'm not tired. You're tired. And so then we do it again, and it's fine. And it's the right energy level, and it's all good. But yeah, so that's been the only time that tiredness has kind of like actively affected me. Generally, I'll be like, oh, I'm so tired. I need to smash an energy drink. And then, okay, great. Now I'm good to go. But yeah.
So, why video games? Or it just happened?
I always wanted, it was actually Halo 2 that's on the Xbox original. And before they did kind of the reboot and all the new cinematics and stuff. It was Halo 2, which got me thinking, I could be an actor. There's actors doing this thing, and I would go onto IMDb and I'd go, who are these people doing the acting in Halo 2? I want to find out who they are. So I would go into IMDb and check them out and go, oh wow, you did this film. Oh, you did that thing. Oh, that's what you look like. Oh, cool. And I would then go and Google what they sound like in real life. Like, wow, you sound just like the Arbiter, or you sound just like Master Chief, or whatever. Steve Downes, I think Keith David, I could be wrong. And so I played Halo 2 to the point where I broke the disc. There was a fault with some of the Xboxes that came out. The disc drive was not like, it wasn't perfect. So I played the disc so much that eventually, it scratched the disc to the point where it didn't work. And because all of my console equipment was NTSC, so it was all like the American style stuff. Yeah. Because like I grew up in Germany, we had access to the military bases as civilians, so we could buy American stuff and then take it home.
So your father is military?
No, so neither of my parents are military. So we moved to Germany when I was a kid because we just decided to pack up and leave the U.S. So I was a full-on immigrant to Germany. There was
Germany where? Berlin?
No, so I was in about an hour south of Frankfurt near a town called Darmstadt. I was living in a town called Bensheim on the Bergstrasse. So there's three towns. It's Zwingenberg, Auerbach, and Bensheim. These are the three towns on the sort of in this area. So my parents thought when we were younger, well, let's go. They went traveling in Europe in the 80s, and they really enjoyed it. And they said, hey, wouldn't it be great if our kids had some experience of living overseas and living in a different country? Because they had both lived in the U.S. their entire lives. Same thing with their parents and their grandparents. So they'd never really lived or knew any other country. So I think they really enjoyed Germany, and they thought, well, we'll have the kids go to Germany, and maybe they'll learn German because they're still kids, and we'll stay for 2 years, and then we'll go back to the U.S. So my dad was working for a company that had a branch in Germany, so he applied for a job in Germany, and they helped him get a work visa. So then we just packed up and moved. We weren't expats, we weren't diplomats, we weren't military. We literally just packed up and left the country.
How many brothers or sisters do you
So it was me and my sister. So she's about 2 years older than me. I was 5 at the time. So we moved over to Germany. I was put into German kindergarten, knowing no German, but kids are like sponges. Like they'll pick up the language really
So
quickly.
it wasn't too hard for you?
I hated school when I was a kid, mostly initially because of the language, but I also got bullied a lot. And so it just,
Really?
yeah.
Why? Because you're just an English
Kids will be kids. They'll find something about you they don't like, but I think because I wasn't native, that might have played an effect. And I also know that a lot of my friends, I had a friend of mine, he was half Armenian, half Pakistani, and he got picked on. There was a lot of the other Turkish kids who were in school, they got picked on as well. And so it might have been because I was not native. I don't know. Kids will find a reason to not like you. It's like, oh, you've got a stupid face. It's like, I don't like
glasses.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought we'd stay for like 2 years. We ended up staying for like 6.5. And then my dad was offered a job in the UK, so we moved over for that. And then I've been in the UK ever since I was 12. But I grew up speaking German more often than I did English, to the point where I had to actually go have English lessons to like learn to read and write in English, because I did it in German, but I wasn't getting any education for the English side of it.
What about the schooling system? Which one did you finally prefer?
I was in what was called the Grundschule, which is the like state school, if you will. So this like public school, you don't have to pay for it. And then eventually we moved over, my sister and I moved to a school called FIS, which was Frankfurt International School, which was a private school, but it had an American curriculum. And so my parents and it had a full sort of high school in it. So you do grades, I think 1 through 12 in the American system, and then you could go to university. And so they wanted to make sure that we had been educated in the American system to make it easier for university, because they just assumed that, oh, you'll go back to America for school.
Yeah.
And actually, neither my sister or I have gone to the American schools. We both went to school in London. So eventually, we got my dad was offered a job in London, so we moved over. And then when I was 17, I got a UK passport, so I became a UK citizen. And so I could then, when I went to university, I got a government scholarship. So not a scholarship, I took out a government loan to pay for it, because I wouldn't be able to pay for it without it. So I took out a loan to go to university, and after about 5 years of auditioning, I eventually got into the school LAMDA, which was a great school.
So you had this, you had your focus, and you just tried for 5 years.
Yeah, so I kept.
So why LAMDA then?
The UK acting industry is still very aristocratic, in my opinion, and particularly there's still an aristocratic culture in the UK anyway. I think like where you trained or went to school for all kinds of different fields has an effect on whether somebody hires you. It's no different than saying you went to Harvard, or you went to Oxford or Cambridge, or you went to Die Reinhardtszimmer as an actor. I think it's in Austria, maybe Germany. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. I don't know. But I just know the name of it. That the school does the vetting and kind of the filtering for an employer.
So this branding helps a lot, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so there were a handful of really good schools in the UK that consistently produce good actors, that have really good actors that come from them, that have trained there. And the teachers who trained those actors, in a lot of cases, are still at the school. So in theory, you are being trained by the teachers who trained these famous actors who attended these schools when they were younger. And so I knew that, like, I don't look like Brad Pitt. Like, I can't sort of just go, hi, I'm incredibly attractive, you should just hire me. There are some actors who, they're good actors. They're not great, but I know that they get a lot of work because of their appearance. And yeah, appearance is a factor in jobs.
Steve Buscemi, for example, which is, well...
He has a very characterful face. And you wouldn't go, yes, he obviously looks like a male model. He's got a very characterful face. He is a very good actor.
Definitely. Yeah. But you cannot really say that he's good looking. Well, he's a fine man, but he's maybe weirdly looking in a good way. You know?
He's unconventionally attractive, for putting it that way. Yeah, that's another way of saying it, I guess. So I knew that, like, I had to kind of stack the deck in my favor. I kind of had to get all the right cards together. And if I'm playing Magic the Gathering, something, I'm just going to stack my deck here to be in my favor. So having a good school behind kind of that seal of approval, if you will, on my CV or resume was really important, because I knew that that would open doors that I don't know where the doors are and they get opened after they hear I went to a good school, or that somebody is more willing to take a risk on me because they believe I'm less of a liability than another young unknown actor, simply because I went to a good school. If there's another 6-foot-something American redheaded actor that I'm competing against, and I went to the school that I did to, and they went to one that's not well known,
Yeah.
and you have to just pick somebody based on what you see on their resumes, I'm going to get picked over the other person. It's you could call it elitist or whatever, but like,
No, it's just rational. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, that's just the way it is. And I wanted to make sure that I had everything in my favor as best I could.
So, but 5 years is a lot. How did you cope with this struggle? And did your parents support you this time?
Yeah, so my parents have always been very supportive of me. They basically said, you can do what you want as long as you're not an axe murderer. So, what about a sword murderer? It's like, just stop that. Enough of that.
Really low.
Yeah, and so they were like, look, you can do whatever you want. Just like, don't be shitty. It's like, don't be a burden on society. And so I said, well, I want to be an actor. I was like, okay, great, we'll support you in that. They've always looked at it as, it's your life. You choose what you want to do. We'll support you. You let us know what you need, but you need to put in the work and you need to put in the effort. You can't just sort of like sit around and wait for somebody to hand you something. You need to.
So this responsibility came, or this sense of responsibility came from your parents.
Yeah, they very much kind of endowed me with the sense of hard work and graft, and like teaching me that you are responsible for yourself. If you cause a problem and you're the one who caused it, you're responsible for fixing it. Obviously, if you need help, like in whatever way, they would do their best to help, and they have. But a lot of my success in voiceover has been driven by the work that I put in. There are people, like, I can't take 100% credit. Like the fact is, I have really good agents who help keep me employed and help find me really good work that I'm really grateful for. And then a lot of the work that I put in is finding myself work, particularly in voiceover for games. So I guess to answer your question about why voiceover for games, initially I've always wanted to work in voiceover for games. I didn't really know where or how I was going to do it, but I knew that I wanted to do that. The very first game that I worked on is a game that never came out. It was for a colleague of mine who's in Slovenia. So I recorded all the lines for like a vertical slice demo that he was doing for a game. And like, I think I've got the recording of it somewhere, and I listened back to it at one time when I still knew where it was, and it was terrible. I mean, it's just terrible, wooden, awful acting.
What do you mean wooden?
Like, there was no emotion, there was no kind of nuance, no subtlety. The performance was very flat and uninteresting. And so at the time, I'm having a great time. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm working on a game. Isn't this cool? And they paid me for it, which was great. And then as time went on, I would sort of audition for games, like a lot of indie stuff that I would see like an advertisement on Facebook saying, hey, I'm the audio director. I'd like people to audition. Here's a script. Send it to this email with the subject heading and let me know. And then we will let you know if we want to pick you. I'm like, great, cool. That sounds good. I'll do that. So I did that, and I booked a couple of games, and I kept working with the same people over the years, like particularly with a lot of game stuff and a lot of the indie scene. Like, if you're good at your job as a voice actor and you do a good job, chances are you'll probably get another job from the same people afterwards. I mean, it's no different than any other industry. You work with somebody, they go, hey, we got something else. Do you want to come work on it? And so I kept doing more and more voiceover for games, and eventually, a couple years into my sort of voiceover journey, if you will, I put together a video game voiceover reel. So I ended up writing the script. I picked the characters and the accents I wanted to do. I found the sound effects. I edited it all together, and then I handed it over to an audio engineer who then did the leveling and the mastering and the mixing, because that's sort of a dark magic of engineers that I just don't know. So I'd rather just have a professional deal with it and pay the money. So I did that. I've been using that for a long time now, which has been great. And so then somebody somewhere, I can't remember who it was, said, oh, you should go to conferences for video games. I said, okay, cool. And do what? It says, go and talk to developers, talk to the indie devs who have like an alpha going or like a vertical slice. They need a publisher or whatever. Play their game. Ask, hey, what do you guys need voiceovers? Are you going to be putting voiceover? Oh yeah, we're going to put it in later on, but we don't have the budget right now. And I'd say, well,
just heavy networking.
Yeah, it's just like very heavy-handed, cold calling, sales, networking, all of that. And so it was through those conferences where I found most of my work for a lot of my video game work. And I've now I actually booked my 94th game in 5 years about 2 days ago, which I'm really grateful for. But I've just, like, not to toot my own horn, but I've just been quite sort of relentless and just like going to every conference I could, all over the place. So initially I went to Gamescom on kind of a whim. I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Cologne, go to Gamescom. And it was fine because I spoke German already, so it was like I wasn't gonna have any trouble getting around. And then I bought a business pass, and I bought the meet to match sort of ticket, if you will. And so then somebody contacted me from GIC in Poznan, in Poland, Games Industry Conference, as part of PGA Arena. And so then he said, hey, do you want to come and do a talk? And I thought, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And then he said, oh, well, think about it and let me know. So I thought about it, and eventually I thought, you know what? I think I could do a talk. I think a talk would be okay. So I put together a talk. And then I went to Poland. It was my first time in sort of Eastern Europe, if you will. If Poland is Eastern Europe, I don't know. Is it center?
Yeah, no, yeah, kind of. Well, it really depends. For example, we Eastern Europeans like to think ourselves as a center of Europe, but
yeah, of course.
For you Westerners, then yeah, it's Eastern.
Yeah, it's like, where is it? Well, it's east of where you are, so it must be Eastern Europe. So I went to Poland, and I had a great time in Poznan, and I met with a lot of different developers and a lot of different vendors who handle game audio, and just started networking. And then I then typed in game conferences in Europe, and I found places like GDS in Prague and GGC in Kyiv. I went there in 2019, pre-war, and to DevGam in Minsk when they were still doing it in Minsk in Belarus. And I just went everywhere that I could, and I just decided that, like, I'm going to travel to conferences because nobody else is really doing it. And as I find, I'm the only, at least, voice actor out of the UK, at least, who goes to these conferences. Occasionally, I'll meet other voice actors, like I'll meet other Polish voice actors who are at GIC and PGA in Poznan, and they go to Digital Dragons in Krakow, and which is great. But I find that I'm the only one doing it. I'd quite like to keep it that way. I have a nice sort of territory of work that I'm very protective of, and that's where I find a lot of my work. And I find that if I stop, I found it over COVID actually, because I couldn't really go to the physical conferences because of the lockdown stuff. And even the digital conferences, they were fine, but it wasn't the same as seeing somebody in person. It's like, it's too easy to hide behind a screen and a camera and that kind of stuff. Whereas being face to face, it's a lot easier to put somebody at ease with your presence and your body language. And game devs are notoriously introverted and not great at socializing. And obviously, if you can help make them feel more comfortable and stuff, then there's a lot of opportunities open up. And so I found that when I stopped going to the physical conferences, my work dropped, because game devs, the average sort of game cycle is about a year and a half, 2 years, sometimes longer, obviously. And so I would meet the devs when they were in like an alpha state or like a vertical slice, or just moving out of alpha and now moving into beta and stuff. And then I would meet them, and then maybe a year later they'd go, hey, we're ready for voiceover. Now is the time when we put it in. And so I found that when I stopped going, my work dropped. So it's taken me actually to this year, more or less, for work to pick back up. And I decided, so like work was fine. I was still getting some work, but I like being like really busy. I like working on something new or something I've worked on before on like a weekly basis if I can. That doesn't always happen. When it does happen, it's great, but that's how I like to keep working.
So what, you basically lost a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, something like that. Like
worth of value, let's say.
Yeah, like it was 2022. I had a huge drop in income to the point where I was seriously considering getting a second job because I was just like I was also in Los Angeles at the time. I moved over to Los Angeles for about 5 months to try and find voiceover rep in the U.S., which eventually I did, and I'm with CESD in Los Angeles, who are an amazing company. And the people who are on my team, if you will, Team Mike Bodie, if that's a thing, are wonderful. And
but you decided physically not to remain in Los Angeles?
No, it was just too expensive. Like anybody who lives in LA just knows how expensive it is. You have to have a car to get around because the city is designed to be a car-only city. You have to pay for health insurance. It's like I already pay really high taxes as a UK citizen. I get the NHS. I don't have to own a car. Like I can drive, but I don't need to own a car because I can get public transport, because public transport in London and in the sort of home counties, if you will, and sort of outside of London works. Whereas public transport in LA doesn't really work. It's there, but if you don't have to take it, you don't. And there's a lot of people who agree with that sentiment. It's like, yeah, it's okay. It's not great. And doesn't go as many places as easily, as efficiently as other places with better public transport.
Well, England has great public transport.
Yeah, exactly. That's like London has excellent public transport. So I was in Los Angeles for 5 months, and I was like, it was just tough because I was just bleeding money, and I didn't have that much work, and I built sort of a temporary booth in my Airbnbs that I was staying at, and I was getting up at 5 a.m. every day and going to bed at 8 o'clock in the evening so that by the time I woke up, so by the time I woke up, it was 1 p.m. in London, so I could respond to emails, and if they said, hey, you've got a job tomorrow, that's great, but if I wake up at 9 a.m., that's 5 o'clock for them, so they're leaving the office. So if they sent me an email saying, hey, are you free tomorrow, I've missed it.
Yeah.
And then they go home, and because they got their own lives, and then I missed the job. So I was getting up at 4:30, 5 a.m. every single day for about 5 months straight. Eventually I adjusted to that time frame, and that's just the way it was. So I was doing some work remotely in my sort of makeshift booth in my Airbnbs, but it was also just me by myself for 5 months in Los Angeles. And I only realized later that, wait, I actually know people in this city. Why am I spending my time by myself?
Yeah.
But
you cannot really have a healthy personal life when you have such a schedule, can you?
Yeah, it's tricky because like you get to 6, 7 o'clock and it's like, oh, it's time for bed. And then if you go any later, if you're getting back at like 11, 12 o'clock at night, getting up at 5, it's like, oh man, I'm so tired the next day.
Yep.
So it was tricky, but like I just decided, I thought, you know what, I have to, if I want my career to go anywhere, the next sort of logical step would be to find representation in Los Angeles. And the great thing for me about voiceover is that so much of it is self-driven. Like a lot of the traditional fields of acting, like film and stage, you do need an agent with connections if you want access to the higher level projects. Yes, you can send an email or a letter to a casting director. Yes, you can invite them on your own if you're not represented, but your job is a lot easier when you have a team of people working for you. We have agents whose job it is to help arrange those logistics to make that happen. But like finding that kind of work, the stage and screen work, is just really difficult.
How much percentage speaking of the paycheck is going to the agent?
Different types of work in different agencies in different countries have different commission rates. So for the UK, for example, if you do commercial work, let's say it's called in-vision or on-screen, 20% of the fee is subtracted. So you have your fee, and then you subtract 20%, that commission goes to them. If you do like a couple of days on a TV show, in the UK, it's 12.5% average goes to the agent. Voiceover work in the UK is generally about 15% subtracted from the fee goes to the agent. Now, granted, they're the ones who are doing the communicating, and they're arranging all of where the studio is going to be.
Seems reasonable.
It's reasonable. Like I might get like a really well-paid job, and they just say, show up here at Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I go, great. I didn't have to communicate with them. I didn't have to send them my reels. I didn't have to do all the price negotiating. They take care of that. They are basically working on my behalf passively. Not that they're subservient in any kind of way. It's like I have to have a good relationship with them, and
Obviously,
I have to obviously not be an asshole and be disrespectful. But for them to take 15% of a job that they got me that I didn't really have to do that much work to get is pretty good. In the U.S., and I think maybe Canada as well, the fee structures are slightly different. So you'll get your fee, and then the client will also pay 10% of the fee, or maybe a slightly higher percentage of the fee to the agent. So let's say a job is $1,000. So then that would be $1,000 plus 10%. So there is no portion of my fee which is subtracted to pay the commission. It's always added on top. Okay. So in the U.S., it's the commission is added in addition to the fee. In the UK, it's subtracted from the fee. And some people will if they unless they've worked in both areas, they tend to go kind of, what? Oh my God, I can't believe they do that. It's like, well, that's just the way it is, and I'm perfectly
I think
happy.
That's very European. I think we're also used to the thing that you're giving a slice of your pie to your agent rather than the payer adds additional. Yeah.
And to your original question, talking about like, I'll just sort of finish on this point that for me, voiceover work is incredibly self-driven. And so I get to get up in the morning, and a lot of my work I do is cold calls. It's admin and it's emails. And even for stage and screen actors, a lot of it is just admin. It's boring, sending emails, making sure that your profiles are up to date, making sure that you still look the same way as your photo, a lot of self-maintenance, exercising, not eating crap, taking care of yourself. And then obviously on top of that, trying to learn new skills to make yourself more employable as best you can. Am I a perfect saint at all of those things? No, no actor is. Yeah, there are a handful who are absolute hustlers who do that. Great, cool. But like everybody goes through periods of their career where they're not taking care of themselves, where they're letting their admin kind of slip, where they haven't updated their profiles, their online acting profiles for whatever breakdown service you're using. They haven't updated them in a while. It happens. Like, are there people who are on top of it 100% of the time? Yeah, but that's splitting hairs, and that's kind of few and far between. Kudos to them who are doing it, but people go up and down in their careers for all kinds of reasons. And so voiceover is very self-driven, and that's one of the things I like about it. To answer your question about being American in Europe, a thing that I find with the British casting industry in particular is they are selective about who they let perform in their own accents. So for a thing that I struggle with is, and I actually had addressed this with my agent a few weeks ago, and I realized part of it's actually my fault. So I was under the perception that casting directors in the UK, if you are American or North American or Canadian, you're not allowed to do anything British. It's not that you're not allowed. It's like you're not forbidden, but if you say you can do it, you need to show some kind of proof. And so I thought, well, I've worked in these regional accents to a native standard, and no one's ever said, hey, your accent is terrible. But what I realized was that I wasn't showing any of that work. I didn't have that work online. I wasn't sort of posting about that.
So it wasn't part of your portfolio or your reels.
Exactly. So for years, and I only had this sort of dispelled about 2-3 weeks ago, that because it wasn't because I said that I could do the accents that I can do, which is true, I can. If you say do them now, I'll go, yep, sure, I'm going to do them. But I didn't have proof of it. I didn't have something to back up my talk. There was no walk to back up my talk. And so I spoke to my agent in the UK, and we agreed that's like, right, we're going to record some samples of me showing I can do a lot of the accents. Because for years I believed that, well, I'm North American, and the British don't want to work with that. But if you're British, you can play North American. You can do that. You're just putting on a silly foreign accent. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
You just simplify your British.
Yeah, exactly. And so granted, like most Americans find doing various British accents very difficult. Like I look at it as kind of like a mountain. So at the top of the mountain, you've got British Town. And at the bottom of the mountain, you've got America Town. So when people from British Town want to go to America Town, they walk down the mountain, and it's a lot easier to get there. And maybe they slip, or maybe they stumble, but not all that often, because it's a lot easier to go down the mountain than it is to go up. So British actors tend to make mistakes. Like I can hear it, and I can go, "Yep, that's wrong. Yep, that's not correct. You can do that better." The mistakes are fewer, and they're not as obvious, but they're still present. Still there. But unless you know what you're listening for, you're not going to know. And a lot of British theater practitioners and a lot of people in the British industry don't know what's wrong. They don't know where the errors are. So no one ever tells them, hey, that's wrong. So they kind of stay in this state of not quite 100%. It's always kind of like 90, 95, 98. But you're still making errors. But nobody ever corrects them that additional percent to make sure it's flawless. Now, if you are North American and you want to work in an accent in the British industry for something, it has to be 100% minimum. Because as soon as they hear a mistake, you're taken out of the immersion. They know that you're not native. You've ruined it. So again, on this sort of mountain analogy, if you're from America Town and you got to go up to British Town, you got to climb up the mountain, and your mistakes are more obvious and more frequent, and you can hear when they're wrong. And it's generally the same kinds of sounds. It tends to be sort of things around like non-rhotic pronunciation. So, for example, there's a thing called rhoticity. So if I say in an American accent, car, it's that r sound, which is rhotic. That's called rhoticity. It has to do with how you pronounce that. Exactly. But if I say ka, that's non-rhotic. So what you'll get is British actors going, if they're speaking with an American accent, they go, please step in the car, as opposed to please get in the car. Please get in the car, or like area. When they want to say area, I'd say area, they'd say area. But when they do it in American, they go area. It's like area. No, that's not right.
Too much rhoticity?
Too much rhoticity, yeah. They are overly rhotic, if you will.
Okay.
And so I found that because obviously I speak German, I spend sort of my time traveling around Eastern Europe, and I went to a very good drama school. I have a wide variety of accents. And so when I get the chance to demonstrate that I can do it, I generally get down to the last handful of people for the work. I also sometimes just straight book it. Ironically, a lot of the work I do in Los Angeles is for UK regional accents because mine are to a native standard. And I have the advantage of being in Europe and being in the UK. But then like I said, I only realized this recently, is that just because I can say I can do something doesn't mean somebody believes me. I have to show them that I can do it. And particularly on a lot of the actor profiles, whether it's on Spotlight or Backstage or something, those are the names of some actor profile websites. So Spotlight in the UK, for example, I don't have any samples of me speaking in any of the accents I say I can do. And so if somebody comes looking for me, it will say that I can do that, but then when they go looking to see, let's see what it sounds like, I've got nothing.
Yeah, and if the competition has it, then
I lose out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the times when I do get to demonstrate that I can do it, I get the chance to book that job, and I get to do it. Like I do a lot of work for Games Workshop. So I do a lot of their promo work.
Warhammer 40K, especially.
For the Emperor.
For the Emperor.
Exactly. Although I play Tau, so for the greater good. And so...
heresy.
Heresy. Filthy Xenos. And so for them, they're really open to just being like, yeah, sure, just show us the accent and I'll do it. And I know that I'm good enough that if I do something wrong, I will self-correct. And I'll always listen back to what I'm doing to make sure that it's flawless before I send it. Because, again, it's my voice. And I don't want to go onto social media and go, hey, guys, look at this great new promo that I've done for Warhammer 40K. And then it's like, there's 17 errors in that. Yep. And I can't redo that. Shit.
So for Games Workshop, is it more Warhammer Plus, their new streaming service, or some video games?
So I've worked on one of their games. I can't talk about it because it's not out yet. Okay. And I've worked on one of their animations. It's called in an episode called New Life. I think it was season 2 of Hammer and Bolter. I've done some of their other animation, which
is it out yet?
So New Life, the episode called New Life from Hammer and Bolter season 2 is out. That's been out for about a year and a half now, I think. I've done some other animation for them, which I can't talk about. But a lot of the promo work, I do a lot of their promotional work on YouTube. So they'll like be promoting a model, like a new like miniature, exactly. So like I think some of the recent Korn Berserkers, I did. I think for 40K, I did. I think it was called the 8 Bound, which was I think a miniature for the Korn faction in Chaos Space Marines. I did one of the things for that. I did some stuff for Orcs in Age of Sigmar. Something else for the Bretonnians. And then I did the 10th edition How to Play video as well. I did the recent promo where they've taken Forge World and Games Workshop and just turned it into Warhammer.com. So I've done a number of things for them. I think about 14 things for them so far. Some of them I cannot talk about. But yeah, they're a great company to work with, and they're very open to be like, hey, we want this character to have this accent, and I'll do it. And they're all British themselves, and so if I was doing a terrible job, they wouldn't hire me. But obviously, I seem to be doing something right because they keep coming back to me. But they're an example that I kind of, like I said, put these two things together, and I had this really, and I had been bitter for years about this. Like, why can't I do like the British work? I want to do this character in this show or this thing over here, and then I realized that, oh wait, I don't actually have any work proving that I can do it. I just say I do, and as soon as I get the chance to audition in that accent, I have always gotten good feedback. Even if I don't get the job, they go, "Hey, we still really like the performance you gave." But it's tricky if you can't prove you can do the thing, they're not going to give you the chance to audition. Because or at least in my experience, yes, I appreciate everybody has different experiences. People listening to the podcast, don't jump down my Twitter throat about this. In my personal experience, as I found out, unless you can show that you can do that accent, finding work or getting an audition for it is really tough. Some people are very open to going, yep, just send us an audition, let's go. But for me, sort of a goal kind of around the New Year time, because I've been sort of balls to the wall going to conferences like every 2 weeks since March. I've been, I've been to, let me work it out. I've been to San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Brno. I'll be in Prague later in December, Iceland, Vilnius, Gamescom, Vienna, Bratislava, Brighton for Develop. I've been all over the place for since March. Yeah. And I'm just. Must
have been tiresome.
I'm burned out. Mm-hmm. I was super stressed before I came to do the creative speaker program at MediaCore. Because I was just like, I had to put another talk together, I had to put a workshop together, and I've never really properly run a workshop before, so it was very much a trial by fire, but fortunately it worked out really well, so I was really happy with it. I had to put together another talk, which I got the chance to do yesterday, actually, because I've been so busy, and I'm putting all this stuff together, and then it turned out really well, and obviously the team at MediaCore have been great, and I've had such a super easy time.
That's great.
At MediaCore, yeah, and in Chisinau as well. But I'm just like, at this point, it's the first time probably in a couple years, maybe about a year and a half, that I'm just like, I'm done.
Are you planning a vacation?
I'm planning on probably going to a hotel somewhere that has a spa and a pool and maybe a steakhouse attached all in one, so I can just get up, go to the pool, sit in the sauna, get a massage, have a steak, go back in the sauna, have another steak later, maybe go take a walk. But that's, just being because I think I canceled on a couple things I wanted to do during December, and I was just like, you know what, I need to take a break.
About the conferences, so you've been to so many. Which one of them, or which ones of them are your favorite? Not objectively, but subjectively.
The ones that I like GIC in Poznan in Poland. I always go there. I love going to Poland. Poland's one of my favorite places. I really liked Digital Dragons in Krakow. I'm gonna go back there again. I always like Gamescom is fun. I had a really different experience this year because I've met a lot more people, and I spent a lot of time actually outside of the Kölnmesse, the big sort of conference center, hanging out and going to sort of like parties at like a hotel somewhere or something on the side or like something that's not in the main event that's somewhere else. Just because I'm meeting more people, meeting more decision makers, kind of higher ups.
Well, that's where the business is happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sort of a novelty when they show up. I'm like, oh, hi, I'm a voice actor. It's like, oh, wow, really? What have you worked in? All of this stuff. And they list my stuff and they go, oh, wow, okay, so you're somewhat competent. It's like, yeah, I like to think so. It's like, you seem to be employed. It's like, yes, sir, I am. And there's I play various games with a CEO of a company in Germany, and so he's very well connected, and he'll just like have like big dinners and be like, all right, guys, come on, let's have a dinner together, let's all meet up, and sort of like if you have his approval, kind of like his blessing, then it's like, oh, you're here because of him. All right, so you're legit.
Part of the inner circle.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're part of the inner CEO gamer circle. Which is a lot of fun. But like this year, I was just like, Gamescom was enormous. It was so big, even bigger
320, I think.
1,000?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think Tokyo Game Show was the second, 240.
Really? I've never been to TGS.
Yeah.
I think my one kind
It was
of...
my first time this
It was your first time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. You had a real trial by fire.
It was a very heavy year for me as well, but it was packed.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine how packed was Gamescom.
Yeah, I mean, there's basically two sections. There's the consumer section, which once it hits, I think Friday, it's like a circus. Like it's just like some sort of bazaar out of some like Turkish mass market where everyone is sort of like screaming and shouting and stuff. And obviously nothing against the Turks or anything, but like it's just chaos. And it stinks because it's sweaty cosplayers and teenagers and stuff.
The worst thing in Tokyo was that their summer is terrible. So their July and August is stuffy, high humidity, it's hell in Japan during summer. And the problem was that their summer spilled over into September. So it was like a sauna, It was quite terrible. Yeah.
Jeez, yeah.
So we sweated like, you say pigs, I think.
I don't know how well pigs sweat. Like people always go, "Oh, I'm sweating like a pig." It's like, yeah, but when was the last time you went to a pig and went, "Oh, you're sweaty"? It's like, yeah, I know, right? Like. I've never like no one's ever gone and picked up a pig and goes, "Oh man, this pig is so sweaty. God, you're sweating like a pig." It's like I've never seen a sweaty pig. It's just like, "Oh, my plate is bacon." But yeah, like Gamescom was great. It is very different than a lot of the other conferences because it's just so big, and it's got its business section, its consumer section, and then it's got its sections kind of outside of all of it. Where if you're in the inner circles, quote unquote, then yeah, you can do that, and then you can maybe find those places. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's super hectic. It's mega busy. Like if you want like a trial by fire for games conferences, go to Gamescom. Everything else will be smaller and more manageable. Like it's a lot easier after that. Like if you can handle Gamescom or TGS, you're good. Or one of like San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con. I went to New York Comic-Con the first time this year, and that was like Gamescom because it was just so big and
overwhelming.
It was overwhelming, and I had tickets. I had tickets for 3 days. I only went once because I was just like, you know what? I got what I needed from this. I'm not going back the next 2 days. It's just too many people. Like seeing all the cosplay stuff and all the kind of like stuff that was for sale for consumers was great, and that was just really cool from like being a nerd and being like, wow, they've got like a 20-foot Evangelion statue here, and like, hey, that's a high quality resin model of Godzilla that's 9 feet tall. Like, isn't that cool? You kind of see it and go, huh, all right, moving on. And so I got what I needed from it. I had a good time, and and stuff. But yeah, as far as conferences go, I love GIC. Gamescom is a lot of fun. A lot of the GGC events are good as well. What else? What's some new ones? I went to...
where is GIC?
GIC is Games Industry Conference, is in Poznan in Poland. It sort of happens at the same time as PGA, Poznan Game Arena.
Game Arena, is it an esports event or something?
So it is an indie event. It's a consumer event. So they've got their consumer side where you can play demos of so they had demos of Phantom Liberty before it came out. And they had they were showing off some new DLC from Fallout 76 and a bunch of other stuff as well. So if you don't own the games, you want to play the games, you can go and play them, like any other consumer event. And then they have like an indie section as well, which they do. But yeah, so PGAs happens at the same time as GIC. One of the probably most fun conferences I had was the Central Asia Game Show, CAGS, in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And that was a lot of fun. They had a sort of a cultural experience, if you will, for some of the speakers. Because it's such, obviously, if you're coming from the West and you're coming from Western Europe, it's such a unique place to go. Yeah. Obviously, it's not unique if you live there because that's your home.
No, obviously, but it must be exotic for you.
Yeah, you could say it's sort of exotic, and obviously, it's very different from what I'm used to in Europe. I had a great time there. It was my second time going at CAGS. I think it's been running for 5 years now. But it was great to go. I got to do one of my talks. And hang out with some people, and I met a handful of colleagues who I know that they were Kate Edwards and Vlad Miku were also creative speakers at the MediaCore Creative Speakers Program.
Yep.
And so I had met Kate Edwards at GDS in Prague, I think in 2019, and then I met Vlad Miku in Bishkek, and yeah, so that was great. But yeah, those are my sort of favorite conferences.
Speaking of favorites, so. Which are your, of course, we're talking business and maybe it's not great to be very selective about it, but which are your most fun acting modules or instances? So which voices or characters did you like best from your recent experience?
So
that you can talk about.
I can talk about, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I played one of the side quest characters in the AWE DLC and Control by Remedy, and I play a disembodied spacesuit. And so all of the lines that I had, it was all grammatically and structurally correct, but all of the words were entirely random. So it was all just gibberish. So it's this, I want to say object of power or something, or I forget what they call it in Control, where it's you'll get an iconic looking. I
think it's an object of power.
Yeah, I think like
that phone, the
red phone, or the rubber ducky.
Yes, or in Alan Wake, the clicker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so the object of power that I was one of the spacesuits from the moon landing. But in this instance, he's lost his helmet, so he doesn't have a head. And so he wants to get his head back. But he thinks he has the full personality of a really friendly kind of person who's just oh man, you know what work's like? Oh, it's really tough. But everything he's saying is entirely gibberish. She would be like, oh, lady, you were dirt and goose for loosing. Hamsters take the chief head? And I'd be like, what did you just say? Did you just say words in English? This doesn't make any sense. Uh-huh. So the whole point of it is that he thinks that he's communicating really clearly, and everybody is just an idiot because they don't understand him. But he'll be like, no, lady, head, B7XQ, head. And obviously he's not spelling it correctly, or whatever the line is. I can't remember. And so he thinks that he's speaking correctly, but he's not. And so the player has to kind of work out what is it you mean? Oh, you mean literally your head. You're a spacesuit. You need the helmet. Oh, right. Okay. And then you got to go fight a mini boss and then get the helmet. It's okay, great. I'm going to put this giant helmet in my coat pocket of magic because there's no visual inventory system on the character's model. So that was one that was really fun. I did that over the pandemic, actually, remotely. What other stuff can I talk about? Like, I do the mocap for a lot of the new Sea of Thieves content by Rare Studios, which is a Microsoft studio, which has been a lot of fun. And what we've been able to do is kind of increase the production speed by, I think, like 80%, or maybe like the final animation is 80% based on what I do. So we use the XN's, I think, Mark II full motion capture suit. So it's the one that where you're in the full like elastic spandex suit that's got the markers in between the two layers of elastic spandex, whatever, lycra. And so, like, I did all of the mocap for the cinematics and the unique animations for the Monkey Island crossover they did with Sea of Thieves. When I did that for probably about 4 or 5 months, I would come in like every 2-3 weeks to do some more content for them, which is great. I'm actually doing some more work for them on something. I don't know. They haven't told me yet. On Monday, so when I go back to London, I think got some more work coming up for them, which will be great. And like I don't get to record a lot of any voiceover for it actually, but I get to sort of do a lot of the mocap, and they often rely on. Recently, they've been like, okay, we need you to do something with this gun as an emote. And be like, okay, what if I'm like shining it or fixing it, and then suddenly it goes off, and I'm like, sorry, and I like put it away, or like I take out my gun and I go into a pose and it goes off and it shoots and a bird just goes drops, or I take my gun out and I accidentally shoot myself in the foot. So I think we did like an emote pack called Weapon Misfires. The sword one was the hardest because we were like, what can we do with the sword? Like, can take your sword out, look at it, and ow, cut yourself or whatever. And so the thing we did was we took it out and like put it up, and the sword's heavy and it comes down, but it comes down into my foot, and I'm like, oh, get it out of my foot and stuff. And so that one took a while because we had like the sword we were using was not the correct length of the actual asset. So I think they had to do some cleanup to adjust for the distance and the size of that. But yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff, which was great, which is a lot of fun. Stuff that I'm working on at the moment, I got a couple of things I'm doing. So like there's a game called Warhaven, which is coming out. It's free to play. It's on Steam and I think console as well. I play the announcer on that. So it's kind of like For Honor meets Call of Duty, if you will. That's kind of how like it wanted to be. It's a really cool game. I played I think the beta, which was a lot of fun. I only found out recently that it came out. I'm like, great, I'm going to get it. What, it's free to play? Okay, great. I'm definitely going to get it. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm doing some more work on that just because as a lot of live service games continue to develop, there's always like updates. They need new voice lines and stuff. I don't know what I'm recording. I just know that I've got some stuff coming up, and then that's pretty common with a lot of live service games is constant content needing to be recorded.
Do you have any time to play video games for yourself?
Yes, generally in the evenings. Like I'll reach a point where I'm like, okay, I can do no more work today. Now it's time to play. And sometimes if I take a break, I've been playing a lot of Deep Rock Galactic by Ghost Ship Games.
Great game.
Which is a lot of fun, rock and stone. And so what's great about that is if I want to take like a quick break, I can quick play a mission, then jump out and then go back to work. Because obviously it's procedurally generated levels and they don't take that long. And if you got a good crew of dwarves with you, you'll get the job done quickly and everyone's like, right, let's get out, we're done. If you're unlucky and you're playing with new players, which is always fine, it might take a little longer. And I thought, this has been 37 minutes. I only needed to be here for 15, but
yeah, but the community is surprisingly friendly in Deep Rock Galactic.
They're probably one of the best. Like
me, the noob, got a lot of support.
Yeah, exactly, and I got that as well when I first started. And they're probably one of the most supportive communities in the game sphere. Like Call of Duty can be kind of toxic and
or
really
Dota or
and stuff like that, but like. The great thing I think one of the things about Deep Rock Galactic, like no matter how good you are, you're going to die. Your character's going to die and someone's got to revive you. And that's just the way of it. Like I remember when I died the first couple of times, like, oh man, I'm such a bad player. And then you'd see like these triple red star, which is like the highest level you can get for the class, getting killed on a higher difficulty stuff. And they just get swarmed by glyphids and bugs. And it's like, yeah, it just happens. Just res them. You're good. And they're always really supportive of it, which is cool. But yeah.
In this podcast, we're frequently talking about religion. So what's your stance on, do you believe in God?
I believe in an infinite creator. I've had too many instances in my life where I have either almost died, either through accident or through my own stupidity.
Can you talk about them?
Yeah, so first one, I was in a car accident when I was 5. I got hit and run over by a car. I went headfirst into the windshield. I was 5. I was going around a blind corner. I was going too fast. He was going too fast. And I went over my bike into the windshield. And then I kind of like hovered on the bonnet as a car was slowing down. And somehow the bike got mangled under the tire. And the handlebars like stabbed me in the back. And then I didn't like puncture or anything, but like it went through the muscle tissue and like bruised my kidney at that point. And then like I float on the bonnet and I kind of slide off, and then the car's still going, and then I think it runs over my legs. I don't remember any of it. This is what I was told. And so then I wake up, and then I'm like, my mom is there, and she's a paramedic and an ER nurse and a pediatric nurse as well. So if she wasn't there, I'd be dead twice in that.
So you were together?
So I was on my own, actually. I was with my sister, and I was going home and early because I said to my sister, I'm going to go home. Then I get hit by the car, and my sister then rides her bike home and says, Mom, Mike's been hit by a car. Oof. And so she runs down the street to see where I am and stuff. And yeah. And
so she kind of fixed you up on the spot?
She was kind of like looking after me, waiting for the ambulance to show up.
Okay.
And so I went into hospital. I had a broken collarbone that it just straight up broke. And I had what's called road rash, which is where like you get the asphalt and the tarmac kind of scrapes the skin off your legs. And I went into the hospital, and they said, okay, he's fine, you can take him home. And my mom's like, no, leave him here overnight for observation.
So wait, didn't the car break your leg bones?
So it didn't break my legs, but it like badly bruised them. And then I got what's called road rash, which is where like which is quite common, like a lot of motorcyclists will get road rash, when they kind of slide and skid on the road. So it's the road which kind of like tears up the skin from that.
I see.
So in English it's called road rash, like a rash from like, scratchy, but you get it from the road, and it's like horrifically bloody. And so taken to the hospital, they say, oh, you can take him home. He's like, no, leave him here for observation. I end up having a seizure during the night, and they give me Valium to like relax me, but they give me Valium for a 20-year-old. I'm 5. Oof. I'm 5 years old. So they give me like 4 times the amount. So my heart rate drops to like 20 beats a minute, which is like a beat every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And like your average heartbeat is like 60 beats a minute. So a beat every second. So I'm like, beat. Like a kid's heart not supposed to do that.
Yes.
So then they have to intubate me, which is where they stick a tube down your throat and pump air into your lungs. Except they put the tube all the way down into one lung, so I'm not getting enough air. And so they then, my mom's looking at my blood O2 levels, and it's like, these are not high enough, he's not getting enough blood. And so they go do an x-ray on him to see how you place the tube. And so they see the tube is all the way down to one lung where it shouldn't be, so they have to readjust it. So she knew how to intubate, so she readjusted it. And you can see my blood O2 level just going back up, my heart rate goes back up. And then they're like, okay, we need to move him because we're a small town hospital. We don't have the equipment to look after him. We need to airlift him to another hospital. So they airlift me to Mannheim Hospital. They take the tube out of my mouth. They knock my teeth out, which is not supposed to happen when you intubate somebody. You're supposed to take it out, but they just go take it out. And then they put me in the elevator for the helipad to take me as a airlift. And then they put an ambu bag, which is this plastic bag they put over your mouth to pump air in, but the seal is off. So air is going out the other way. So my mom, again, grabs it, puts her hand on it, starts pumping
You are
away.
now shattering all the good myths about good German med system.
The doctor who was in charge of me was later fired for malpractice.
Oof.
Because he's just straight up incompetence. I don't know his name. I don't know what happened to him. All I know, he was fired for malpractice. So eventually I get to Mannheim, and then like 2 days later after this whole thing, I eventually kind of come to again. But that's twice that I almost died in hospital. What was the third one? Oh yeah, the third one was, so I've been sober from alcohol for over 5 years now. I just through being upset, being depressed, alone, anxious, by myself, after I graduated drama school, I turned to alcohol because...
How old are you now?
So I'm 35 now. So I just turned 35. I started my sobriety when I was 29. So my sobriety birth date is the 1st of January, 2018. And I've been sober for over 5 years now. When I left drama school, I didn't have an acting job. I was working as a janitor and a caretaker. It paid well, it was flexible, but I didn't like it. And it was just really soul destroying, and I wasn't getting any work. I was busting my ass trying to give good auditions. I sort of stopped taking care of myself. I started putting on weight, and I started drinking as well. And just over time, I built up a tolerance to the alcohol. So if I wanted that effect of just like turning off the white noise in my head, finding like if something was great, I'd drink. If something was shit, I would drink. And I never really saw it as a problem because nobody really said anything about it. So I kept kind of pushing the goalposts out. I kept kind of like drinking more alcoholic things, drinking when it wasn't really appropriate to drink.
Alone,
often alone.
But when did you start drinking, or overall as a teenager?
I had my first drink when I was 17. I think I had like a pint of Guinness. And that was that, and I'm fine. I had it actually when I was working a job at my high school during the summer. And there were some older guys there. They were like 19, 20, and they're like, hey, let's go to the pub, get a drink for lunch. And I thought, okay, cool. And I was 17. I went with them. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to order a man's drink. I'm going to get a Guinness. So I had a Guinness, and they're like, oh, Mike's getting the Guinness, Mr. Big Boy Pants here. And so then I had it, and I remember drinking it really quickly, and they were just kind of like nursing their drinks and taking it easy. And I was like, oh, I need to drink this beer. And so I drank it, and I could feel like I was a little bit kind of like, oh, I've had something to drink. And I was like, oh my God, my boss is going to find out that I've been drinking. I'm going to fire. Yeah, I was sort of panicking, and it was fine. It was just like, it was one beer, and I never had a beer before.
When did it become a problem? So
it became a problem. It was actually I was doing a show about 5 years ago. I didn't really get along with the cast. Nobody got along with the director. And I was living in a really crappy flat, sort of apartment in London. I didn't really have anything going for me aside from the show that I was doing. And
what kind of show? Some kind of TV show?
It was a show. It was a theatrical show. So it was a piece of theater. And I was of the belief that you'd hear about all these famous actors like Laurence Olivier and Peter O'Toole and these guys, and they were all, and Gielgud as well, and they were all like heavy drinkers. And I thought, well, if I emulate and copy their behavior, maybe then I'll also be good actors like them. So I'm equating like alcohol abuse and being an alcoholic to being a good actor. So I didn't really think of any of my drinking as a problem. When it started to become as reflexive and easy as breathing, that's when I kind of thought, maybe I've got a problem. But I thought, well, I don't have a problem because I have a job. I have friends. My parents love me and they like me. And, I'm still making work in voiceover on the side. So how is my drinking not a problem? I haven't like hit rock bottom. But what I didn't realize was that I hadn't hit rock bottom yet. I wasn't at my lowest yet. I was on my way. But I was still like enjoying the journey. Yeah, things are fine.
So who was that person or instance when you just realized it?
So I was drinking so much that I would wake up in the morning and I was anxious. And I couldn't get rid of the anxiety until I had something to drink. And to the point where I couldn't even get on the tube.
Anxiety, like a low-key panic attack?
Yeah, like a low-key panic attack, if you will. And it was like every morning. Every single morning I woke up.
So just...
Yeah, so it was kind of like, when it's a bit too hot, but you're not quite sweating, and you're kind of like, it's it's a little warm in here, uncomfortable. I felt sort of constantly emotionally uncomfortable. And so I couldn't get rid of that feeling until I went and had something to drink, just anything. And I thought, well, I don't want to have alcohol in my house. And generally, if I had alcohol in my house, I'd drink all of it anyway. So I'd have to go and get more. So I'm like, no, I'm just gonna get something, drink that, and then if I need more, I'll go and get it. So it got to the point where I couldn't get on the tube without having a drink, and I'd buy 2 drinks. I'd quickly have one, and then I generally bought something sort of brightly colored that looked like some kind of like special edition Fanta or Coca-Cola, because you can't drink on the tube. But I didn't care. So I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I get some sort of like purple looking kind of microbrewery can of whatever. And I would drink on the tube. And I would drink after work. I would drink before work, but never at work. So if somebody said, are you drinking on the job? I'd say, no, I'm not. I'm drinking before and after, but never during. Obviously, like it's completely like corrupted logic.
Yeah,
it's complete nonsense. Like I've had something to drink, and then 2 minutes later I go to work.
Yeah,
you might as well be drinking on the job, or at least you are drunk on the job. But I would never drink enough to the point where I was drunk. It was always just to take the edge off, just to have that kind of mellowing effect.
So you'd have around 100 grams of vodka in the bloodstream or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. My poison of choice, if you will, was always high strength beer, because I liked the taste of beer, and I didn't really like the taste of spirits, and I didn't want people to smell it on my breath. So I'd always try and hide it somehow. And it got to the point where after shows, at the end of it, I would go and get like a quarter liter of whiskey, and I would drink all of that really quickly. And it got to the point where I was so depressed and anxious that, a friend of mine in the show was on antidepressants. And she said, I said, yeah, I'm feeling really shitty. And I was telling her about how I was feeling. She said, no, I'm on antidepressants. And I went, what? You seem really happy. It's like, yeah, no, I'm happy because I'm on antidepressants. They're like, oh, what, do they like make you happy? He says, no, they just kind of curb my emotional spectrum. Like, I won't get too angry or too happy, but I won't get too sad either. And so I mentioned this to my dad, and he said, okay, well, I never wanted to mention anything, but I've been actually on antidepressants for a couple months. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I found they really help. It turns out that they were actually really common, particularly in the UK. I don't know what it's like in different countries. And so I thought, okay, let me go talk to the doctor. So I was put on 20 milligrams of what's called citalopram. And it just kind of doesn't like, I don't not feel things, but something that might make me angry doesn't make me angry. Or something that might make me really happy doesn't make me as happy, but it's fun. But it's not amazing like it used to be. So everything just kind of gets capped a little bit.
It minimizes the spectrum.
It minimizes your emotional spectrum as long as you're on them. And so then I eventually went up to 40, and I was on that for a while, but I was also still drinking. And so you're not supposed to drink while you're on them, or at least, I don't know, different people have different effects and stuff, but not supposed to drink while you're on them.
But it didn't have an impact on you?
I think I might have gone up to 40 milligrams of citalopram because I was drinking and because the alcohol was kind of negating, canceling it out a little bit, yeah. But I also found that I had gotten to the point with drinking that I was not dependent on it, but it became such a part of my daily life that I would get anxious if I didn't have something to drink. And so eventually I thought, okay, I need to stop drinking. And I thought, well, I'll go on what's called Antabuse or disulfiram. So Antabuse is it's a medicine that prevents your liver from metabolizing ethanol in the alcohol. So basically the ethanol becomes poison. But the problem is it's a bit like holding a loaded gun to your head, because if you drink while you're on the Antabuse, initially you'll get really sick and just vomit and feel horrific. But if you drink too much while you're on it, it can give you a heart attack and kill you. Oof. So it was literally like taking an alcohol.
Russian roulette.
Literally, yeah. And so my initial kind of experience with sobriety was chemically driven. I had a chemical sobriety, was taking the antabuse. And I thought, so I was on it for like a month and a half, and I thought, oh, great, I don't have an alcohol problem because look, I went a month and I didn't drink, and I don't have any problems with it. So, because I'm not drinking right now, and it's fine. And so 3 days after I stopped taking the disulfiram, because you're supposed to wait 2 weeks for it to fully metabolize out of your system. 3 days out, because I thought that I was special and different, and because, well, I'm bigger than most people. I'm above average height, I'm above average intelligence, and all of this ego-driven stuff. I thought, it's 10 a.m. in the morning. I'm going to see if I have a drinking problem by getting something to drink. So I have a liter of 9% special brew beer on the train, had my first one, and then I get the horrible reaction. My face swells up, my lips, my eyes, my tongue, everything just swells up. And it's horrific, and I can feel the
like an allergy or something.
It was like an allergic reaction, like a really bad bee sting if you're allergic to bees.
Oof, okay.
So it was hard to breathe and all this stuff. And I get and I'm going into town for like 2 shows for a 2-show day on the weekend. And I show up and I look like I have an allergic reaction, like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, because I'm actually anaphylactic to horses. So I said, oh yeah, there were some horseback riders on the train at 10 a.m. and, I'm allergic to horses, and, I must have had a bad reaction. Oh, okay, well, let us know if you need anything. Yeah, sure, I'm sure. And I'm already like 2 drinks in by this point. And I finish the day and I feel better. And then I go, oh man, I had a long day. I'll have something to drink. Hey, I have a long day, why not? So again, I have the reaction again, and I'm like having to lie. I was living at home at the time, so I was having to lie. I went, oh yeah, more horses and more horseback riders on the train. My mom's a nurse, and at the time she believed the lie I told her, and I've told her I've told this to her before. That I said, yeah, I was lying about that. And she said, oh well, you need to take some antihistamines to get over this reaction. I'm like, oh great, you don't mix antihistamines and alcohol because it makes it worse.
Ooh,
so
okay.
I woke up with a horrific hangover, and then I kept drinking, and I didn't stop. And I carried an extra pair of socks in my bag so that the bottles, when I bought them, they wouldn't clink, because I would put them in the socks. Ooh. So they'd be like silencers for the socks, like silencers for the guns, silencers for the beer. And so I would buy like 8% Duvel Belgian beer bottles. And then when I was done drinking them, I would drink it out of a sock, because if I had to put it down, I didn't want my parents to hear the clink of when I put it down on the table. And when I had to carry it out of the house, I didn't want it to clink in my bag. And so I would always start carrying an extra pair of socks with me, which is crazy. You just think like, what sane person goes, you know what, the best thing I can do today, I'll carry some socks to hide the drinks that I have in my bag. That's not a normal way of thinking. That's that's a sick person's way of thinking. And I never thought that I had an illness. Mm-hmm. I just thought, hey, I'm a creative person. I can have a drink. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. But I kept drinking to the point where I remember one day, I said, I'm not going to have a drink. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. How did this get in my hand? And I completely blacked out in the process of going, I'm not going to have a drink. I'm not going to have a drink. And it was so reflexive. I didn't remember it even happening. But I walked out of the supermarket with a bottle of whiskey in my hand. And by the time I realized I had a bottle of whiskey in my hand, half of it was gone. Oof. And I'm like, I have no idea what just happened. And then I got really scared and anxious. And I thought, well, I better calm myself down and have the rest of it. And so it got to the point where I told my parents I wasn't drinking. And then one night I had half a liter of whiskey, 6 beers, and I think I asked somebody for a cigarette, which gave me a huge headache. And it was probably the most I'd ever had to drink in my life all in one time.
Well, but that's a lot, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I came home, and I'm sitting down, and I stand up to go somewhere to go to the kitchen. And my dad can see me that I'm stumbling. And I had told them that I wasn't drinking. I said, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm not drinking anymore. And he comes in and he's like, have you been drinking? I'm like, no. And he pauses and he goes, have you been drinking? I'm like, yeah, I have been. And so then I just broke down. I just started crying. And I'm like, and I said to him, I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to not pick up the alcohol. It became so It was as easy as breathing. And the only way I can kind of describe the feeling of needing it to somebody is I go, hold your breath. And when you think you need to breathe, keep holding it. And then when you think you need to breathe again, keep holding it. And then when you get to that feeling of, we need to breathe, it was that feeling that I felt if I didn't have alcohol, that I just needed it. And that's the only way I can sort of describe that sensation of needing to have alcohol. It was as reflexive as breathing. Like if you go underwater and you're swimming and you're like, I need to get to the surface so I can get air. That feeling was what it was like.
So it came before food,
It came before food. I would drink in secret places. I would hide it. I would buy it, store it places. I would drink on the train. I would drink around work, all this kind of stuff. And so I think I was 5 weeks sober, and I just couldn't handle sobriety. Let's just go back to your question about religion. This is where it all kind of ties in. I was 5 weeks sober, and I couldn't handle not having alcohol. So in the UK, you can get cocodamol, which is paracetamol and codeine, which is an opioid. And you can get ibuprofen and codeine, both of them together. And you can get them over the counter. You don't need a doctor's prescription. So I went to one pharmacy, I got ibuprofen and codeine. I went to another pharmacy, because you can't buy a certain amount at the same time.
Yeah.
But what if it's 2 transactions at different places? They won't know. So I go and get cocodamol, codeine and paracetamol. I get ibuprofen and codeine. And I take more than the recommended dose of both of them at the same time. And I have a show that evening. And I start having like spasms in my chest. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And so I go back to my dressing room. It's about 4:30. Show starts at 6. Or sort of like you need to be, what's called the show call. We need to be at the theater at 6. And I go to sleep. And then I wake up a little bit later, and I'm really sort of tired and woozy and stuff, and the spasms have stopped. And I went, taking a nap. I'm just going to go back to sleep. And then I realized that my skin is tingling. All my arms, my face, my lips, all of this. And I was a Boy Scout, like a pioneer, when I was younger. And I knew that sensation is carbon dioxide poisoning. So what opioids do in your brain is that they sever the connection of the autonomic nervous system. So when you sleep, you breathe, that's your brain running your respiratory system through the autonomic nervous system. So what opioids do is that it severs that connection. So your brain stops controlling your body breathing.
So you might have died.
Exactly. So I started.
Or you were dying.
So I was dying. And I had carbon dioxide poisoning, and I recognized that I had this. And I went, my skin's tingling. Oh, that feels kind of nice. And I kind of go back to sleep. And then there's something in my Boy Scout brain remembered, this is carbon dioxide poisoning. It's when there's too much carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. So I went, fuck. And I got up, and I'm just sort of like stumbling around because I'm so tired because of all of all of the drugs that these codeine that I had taken. I drop to the ground. I start doing push-ups to try and like get my heart rate up and the blood going. And then I go out and I start running around up and down the hallway in the theater. And I go out, get some coffee and get some food. And then I realize that, holy shit, had I gone back to sleep,
you would have died.
They would have found me like taking a nap in the chair when I'd be dead.
Right.
And I'm just like, and since then I have never touched codeine since. It's just like.
So what effect does that have?
So what it said to me was, that was the third time where I had almost died.
The third?
The third. The first 2 was a car accident.
Yeah.
So it said to me that, and since I've been sober, all of the things that I was looking for at the bottom of a beer tin or at the bottom of a wine bottle, I found in sobriety. And so what it said to me was that there is something that wants me to live because I still have something to do. And so figuring out what that is, I've been doing that over the last sort of 5 years. And I find that a lot of the more I lean into voiceover, the more I lean into voiceover for games, the more doors open up, the more opportunities appear, the more synchronicities, the more coincidences occur in what I do. And these are not things that I'm doing. These are things that are happening as a result of what I've done. But because I've stayed sober, I try to keep things in the day for myself. So I try to take things one day at a time. I try not to hurt myself or hurt other people. And by practicing what are called principles of sobriety, I am a different version of myself than I was 5 years ago.
Oh, yes.
And and people go, you are entirely different than what you used to be like. You look different, you act different, you sound different. And my success that I've had in life and career-wise is directly correlated with my sobriety. Like you look at my date of when I started being sober to when I started finding some success in my career field, they cross over exactly.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for opening up. I don't really know till the very, like in my plate, but I presume that it takes a lot of courage to first of all, open up about these problems. Many people, like you're saying, don't man up or don't go that far as to understand that it's very important to realize.
The thing with people who suffer from addictions is that they're not bad people. They are sick people wanting to get well, but they don't know how to get well. Like, yeah, you can have some kind of addiction and you can be an asshole. And probably you end up blaming other people. It's like when you point the finger at somebody else, there's three pointing back at you, but you don't ever know that.
So what is the first, or how do you spot an alcoholic, or how do you understand that you are an alcoholic?
So I practice recovery through one of the World Service programs. So I'm in one of the recovery programs. And like for the first step, they say is that you admit that you have a problem. You acknowledge that your relationship with whatever your behavior or addiction is not, that it is a problem, and that you are powerless over it, and that your life has become such an unmanageable state.
So that you need help.
So that the first step is so that you admit that you have a problem. You go, you know what, I got a problem. I can't. When I try and say no to the thing, I just can't. And then because I can't say no, because of my powerlessness, it leads to a life that's unmanageable. Like if I drink and then I wake up with a hangover, I'm late for work. That affects my job. So my life starts to become unmanageable. One of the other steps in some of the recovery programs is that you ask for help, that you are willing to go through the whatever lengths necessary to achieve sobriety from your behavior, your addiction. And then there's other steps that go along with it, so on and so forth, to aid you in kind of mending and fixing your life and creating stability and structure within your world as you maintain sobriety throughout. And I'm immensely grateful for the recovery programs that I'm a part of with that. And like, I don't mind talking about it. Like if I go to I'm now at the point where I can go to the pub, I can go to the bar, I can buy everybody drinks. I just don't drink it. I'll buy something else. I'll buy, I don't know, like a tonic water and ice or something.
And you are in that position now that you are aware and conscient that you don't need it and don't want it, and it's okay with you?
Yeah, and I'm perfectly fine with it. Like the sobriety skills, if you will, that I've developed through practicing sobriety, through recovery programs, is that I'm now in a position, I better understand the reasons why I drank. I better understand. I can manage it. I can manage the feelings that caused me to drink in the first place: the fear, the anxiety, the wanting to be kind of the big guy, the big man on campus, the kind of the tough guy who can handle his alcohol and this kind of stuff. And then the life of the party. Like if I have drinks and I can talk to people, I won't be socially awkward, and this kind of stuff. It's like I'm now at a point where like.
You can't be that without the alcohol.
I'm at the point where I can be those things if I want to be, and I don't need the alcohol. Like if I want to act like the big tough guy, I can, but I'd probably be an asshole. So it's like I'd rather not be that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I've accepted to the point where it's like, you know what, I don't want to be that person.
Is that actually maturity, or is it an acquired skill, or how would you call that?
I'd probably call it a bit of both. I mean, there is a degree of needing to develop skills to kind of maintain a sober life, and to there is a degree of sort of hard skill, soft skill creation in that way. I think part of it is also maturity, but like because I'm not drinking, that maturity is able to occur. That I'm able to mature because of it. It's like they kind of say, like, at the point you start drinking the most, that's the age you stay until you stop drinking. So like I started getting drunk when I was 18, 19. And so it's when I stopped drinking, emotionally, I felt like I was a teenager. And up until that point, I felt like I was a teenager. And the alcohol kind of stifles your emotional development. I don't know the science behind it, but that's been my experience. And I know a lot of other people have experienced that as well. And then when they stop drinking, they start to grow up emotionally. And you could call that maturity. And maybe that's just sort of a natural byproduct of getting older. But at the same time, you're not engaging with the alcohol. Do it. And like, there are people who can have a glass of wine or two, get a little drunk, go home, be fine, be safe. It doesn't affect their life. It doesn't hurt them. They're not hurting other people. That's great. I know that for myself, in the same way that if somebody has a peanut allergy, that you just can't take it. Like if you got a peanut allergy and you have some peanuts, into the hospital you go.
Yeah.
I treat alcohol that if I start drinking now, I'm not going to start small. I'm going straight back to half a liter of whiskey, 6 bottles of beer. That'll be my starting point.
Health damaging amounts.
It's like the illness never leaves you. The madness never goes away. It's always in the parking lot doing push-ups, just waiting for you to like slip up. And what I get better at is managing it. And so like there have been times when I've been like, hey, I'm having a lot of fun. Maybe if I just have a drink. But I catch myself at maybe if I
Nope.
And it's for a split second. And then when that happens, I go, why did I feel that? I've been sober for years now. What's going on? Oh, I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm lonely.
Sad, depressed.
I'm sad. I'm depressed. I'm sick or something.
What about the antidepressants?
So I went back on the antidepressants about last year, actually. I had broken up with somebody who I thought I was going to put a ring and a roof over. That didn't work out. And so I was in LA by myself, getting up at silly times. I'd also had a tumor from what's called hyperparathyroidism, which is an illness. And so I was back on that, which caused one of the side effects of that is depression, but I didn't know I had this tumor at the time. So I got the scar on my neck from when they took it out. So I went back on the antidepressants. I went on 10 milligrams of citalopram, which was really helpful. It was really helpful for me. And I've been off of it for over a year now. So I've been on citalopram, I think 2 or 3 times in my life, just when things became really stressful and were just really difficult to manage. I just needed a little bit of help. And because what can happen is stress and not taking care of yourself, that can affect your dopamine, your serotonin levels. And there's no practice, no YouTube clip you can watch to fix it. You need help. And it's a physical thing.
And this is perhaps one of the cases when you're trying to slip back into drinking?
No, so I haven't felt like I've needed a drink in years. Probably like maybe about 4 or 5 months into sobriety, I was afraid of I was afraid of alcohol. I would try to like stay away from it. And if I saw it, I would get like a little bit scared. I'd be like, oh no, it's just alcohol. I'm not gonna be around. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And I would get a little bit panicky sometimes. And over time, I realized it's like, I can be around it. I just don't have it. I don't drink it. I don't engage with it. And other people would, and I was fine with other people getting drunk. And what was interesting for me was actually, it was the first time I saw my friends drunk because I was always drunk with them. And I never saw them drunk. And I remember seeing them drunk one time and I thought, man, these guys are assholes. They're such a bunch of bag of dicks. And it's like, and then like an hour later, they kind of sobered up and they were perfectly fine and friendly. But like I'd seen them at that peak of like having enough to drink, and then it kind of comes down and they start to sober up.
So you kind of got to the place where you didn't want to be like that?
Or it was more of just sort of a curiosity that I saw my friends drunk, but I never saw them be drunk because I was drunk myself.
So you did not realize?
I didn't realize it. But I just part of me just said, you know what? Me plus alcohol doesn't equal a version of myself I'm happy with. I will never get a version of my life or a version of myself that's happy that includes alcohol. I'll happily go and buy people alcohol. I'll buy rounds. I got 4 bottles of wine in my bag downstairs as gifts to people, and I bought them at like Wine MD. And like I'm happy doing that. I just won't drink.
Yeah, because you realize that you have a problem with it.
I have a problem with it.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else has a problem with it, but I know that I have a problem with it. And I know that what I have now in life is not worth a drink because it will never be just one. It's never one drink.
So what I'm interested in, or I would like for the viewers to understand, when is that state when they should question themselves and understand that perhaps they are alcoholics?
I never believed I had a problem. I thought that I drank because somebody else made me angry, or, they really upset me, so I'm going to have a drink, or I'm going to celebrate by having a drink. And drinking at times when it wasn't appropriate. Like when I used to work some jobs elsewhere, and I'd have a beer during work. I get a little bit loose. I didn't need to be drinking at work. It's like, it's the afternoon. What am I doing? I never really thought that was a problem. I hid it from everybody. I was hiding it. And I think, well, if you have to hide it, that's probably a problem. Like if you can't show what you're doing publicly, maybe you shouldn't be doing that thing at all. Like, would you do it in front of your parents? Would you do it in front of a kid? If the thing that you're doing is appropriate to do in front of a child or your parents, maybe it's okay. Like, I don't know, making a sandwich. Something that is an activity that is perfectly fine to do in front of a child. Drinking a bottle of alcohol in front of a kid while it's the afternoon, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Questionable, yes.
Questionable. I never believed I had a problem. And nobody ever said that I have a problem. So, and I trusted people around me because people said I didn't have a problem and that they never mentioned anything. They might have seen it, but never mentioned it. I thought didn't have a problem. So as far as when people, a way for somebody to see if they have a problem with alcohol is, if you want to know if you have a problem with alcohol, stop drinking it, see how you feel, and if you can't manage those feelings without alcohol, if you go a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, but then you start drinking because of how you feel, maybe you got a problem. There's also a thing called a dry drunk. It's when you stop drinking and you don't do anything to manage or address any of your emotional state, any of your personal traumas, any of your experiences which have affected you in life. If you just go through life, you stop drinking, but you don't do anything to address the things that bother you or the things that cause you pain or that trigger you or whatever. That's known in recovery as being a dry drunk. It's where you are dry because you're not drinking, but you still act like a drunk. You still behave that way.
So you mean that you're still as miserable as a drunkard?
Yep. You're still as miserable, unpleasant, nasty, horrible to be around. Nobody likes you. You're just not drinking.
So how do you fix that?
By fixing yourself. Because everything starts like, it's too easy for me to blame somebody else for my drinking. Oh, I drank because they made me feel this way. Oh, I'm having something to drink tonight because I didn't get that job or because work wasn't good today. I always outsource the responsibility to somebody else. Never
so I'm not drinking, but those shitheads, they're still as...
yeah, it's like, well, they're a pain in the ass. That's why I'm drinking. Or they're a pain in the ass, but I'm not going to drink, but I'm still going to be unpleasant about it. I always outsource the responsibility to somebody else. I never said I'm the problem. And I never addressed myself with it. And it wasn't until I stopped drinking and addressed what was going on for me, addressed the reasons I drank, because like I said, you want to know why you drink, stop drinking and see how you feel. And if you don't address those feelings, and if your only way of fixing those feelings is to have more alcohol to fix it, to turn down that noise in your head, you probably got a problem. The best thing is, if you know you've got a problem, that's great, because now you can do something about it. Until you get to that point where you admit, I've got a problem and I want to change and I will do anything I can to change. Once you're at that point, you go, I got a problem. Great. Now you can find out how to fix it. Now you can go about fixing it. I've never met anybody. Some of the most successful actors in the world are sober, and they've been sober for decades. I've never met somebody who is sober, who's thrown themselves into a recovery program, who is now worse off.
So there are virtually no successful, highly functioning alcoholics.
They are, but ask them if they're happy.
Oh, okay.
Like they can be successful, they can be high functioning,
and miserable at the same.
and miserable at the same time. You can make $1 billion and be sad.
Yeah, no, sure.
Like there are numerous millionaires and billionaires who are miserable.
Yeah, because of drugs or alcohol.
Drugs,
but
alcohol,
what
whatever.
about the next step? For example, I got the idea that I'm an alcoholic. I got the idea that it makes me miserable. But is the next step seeking help?
Yeah. If you think
how
you
to
are an
do that?
alcoholic and you want to change, the next step is seeking help. So I'm in one of the World Service Recovery Programs, so it's called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've been going to meetings for over 5 years now, and I went through all 12 steps. And the 12th step is what's called a living step. It's basically you live out the principles and help other people as best you can who are seeking sobriety as well. Sobriety for me is a part of my life as easy as breathing and waking up. And it was one of the best decisions. It was one of the top 3 best decisions I've ever done in my life was getting sober. And there is no amount of money you could pay me to say, have a drink. I don't care if you give me $1 billion. If you think, oh, it's just one shot of vodka, but you can have $1 billion. It's like, yeah, I'll have that $1 billion, and then a week later I'll spend it all on alcohol. And then what will I have? I'll have nothing. I'll be dead. There's no price tag on my sobriety. Just like, there just isn't. I'm not willing to give up this life I have.
So alcohol is often considered as a drug that's legal.
Yeah.
What about so is your stance? So would your stance be in making it illegal?
My stance would be on people are always going to try things and want to do things that are forbidden. If you look at places that have low rates of alcohol-induced death, low rates of narcotic death, access to them is pretty liberal and easy. Education around the dangers of it and the managing and the culture around it, if those are good, then generally there's not as many people with a problem with it. If there is also an outlet for something other than that. It's a great book called Chasing the Scream, and I'll be quick about the story, is that they take a rat, they stick it in a box. They got 2 things of water. One of the waters is laced with cocaine. The other one is not. They leave the rat in there. It's constantly drinking from the cocaine-laced water till it kills itself. They take another rat, and they put it in this big open space, lots of toys to play with, as much food as they want, other rats to play with, and they put water on the sides of the cage. Some of them have cocaine, some of them don't. The rats' consumption of the cocaine-laced water drops because they are social, they've got food on the table, they're playing, they're around other people, they have other outlets for their emotions and their feelings that are not alcohol and they're not drugs. So I think in Iceland at one point, and I could be misquoting the study, and I apologize if that's the case, there was a high degree of teenage alcoholism in Iceland. And it wasn't until they instituted arts and sports programs that were state-run that teenage alcoholism dropped. Because suddenly these kids who are living in a country where there's not a whole lot of sunlight, not always a whole lot to do. By the way, I love Iceland. It's one of my favorite places. It's amazing.
I should visit.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just the best place. Suddenly they had something to do that wasn't alcohol, and teenage alcoholism dropped because they suddenly have an outlet for everything that's going on for them that they don't have to use alcohol to cover up for it or to manage it.
So if there is enough fun and cool stuff to do in your life, then perhaps...
If you have a life that is fulfilling.
Yeah.
And if you are active in creating a life that is fulfilling for you, then there shouldn't really be a need to engage with those things to that extent. Maybe you have a glass of wine and you've got a wonderfully fulfilling life. You have a glass of wine with a meal, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you can have one or half and put it down and leave it.
Yeah.
An alcoholic will keep drinking.
Yeah. It becomes a problem, an addiction.
An addiction. Yeah. It's when you can't stop. It's for me, like I said, when it became as reflexive as breathing. Just like I wouldn't even think, just down.
I see. What about what's your stance on the legalization of drugs? Then would it be better if some of the drugs would be legalized? Like say cocaine.
I don't have a full knowledge on the narcotic problem. Also, I'll discuss from what I know and what I feel. I feel if it was made available, probably less people would use it. You'd have a spike in use.
At first.
Because suddenly it's free and everybody wants it. It's a fad. It's a new thing everybody wants to do. But then I think, again, people would treat it like anything else that's an addiction. They might move away from it. It might, it might kill some people. But then again, when people started driving cars, people got killed. That's why they put seatbelts in cars. Or
just maybe not sell as much cocaine as some people would want.
Exactly. I think people will go, you know what, it's not as fun as I thought it was. It's not as great as I thought it was. Because part of the thing of, if you're doing cocaine, I presume, is that it's sort of forbidden and kind of secret, and there's something dark about it because of how cocaine is made.
Mysterious, cool.
And obviously, like, the production of it where it comes from, it ruins people's lives. And it's so wrapped up in criminal enterprises. I think if you legalized it and you taxed it.
Oh, yes.
If you taxed it, then I think a lot of the places where that make it that are nefarious, sort of cartel stuff, probably that would start to disappear. And then
you'd also end the misery in Mexico and Colombia and whatever.
Yeah, stuff like that. Well, this is the thing that you found with when they legalized marijuana in Colorado. The state said, look, we can either give every citizen in Colorado $8 from the taxes we've collected, or we can invest it in infrastructure. And so they said, invest it in schools, in playgrounds, in infrastructure. We'll, like,
public transport, subways, whatever. If you're saying that it's a problem with.
Exactly. And like, obviously, some people will develop problems with marijuana, even though they claim, oh, it's not addictive. It's like anything is addictive. Video games are addictive. TV is addictive. Anything that changes how you feel can be addictive. Like, is there a chemical addictive property of cocaine and cigarettes and alcohol? Yeah, there is a chemical addiction. Like, it took me 2-3 weeks to get over the chemical addiction of alcohol. That sucked. That was tough. I was on Valium for about a week and a half, and I just slept for I was sleeping 14 hours a day. Fortunately, my parents were around me at the time, so I had sort of a support network. But I think if it is legalized, you're going to have a spike in use. Then you're going to have, if you tax it, it obviously becomes another form of revenue. If it is legalized, one would hope that the taxes from it get specifically earmarked to be used in certain projects only. Like, don't tax people's narcotic use and then go, well, I'm going to increase my money that I receive as a politician because I have the funds to do so. It's like, yes, that's nonsense.
What about prostitution?
I don't know enough about it, to be honest. Like, I don't. All I know about it is that it's probably an awful practice. Maybe there are some people who do it for like. That's just maybe they enjoy doing it. I don't know. I can only presume. Yeah, I don't know.
But would it help if it were legal?
If there were greater protections for the people who practice it, I think that's to their benefit. But granted, I think it's probably better that you create an employment system where you don't have to do it.
Yes.
Where like people don't feel like the only way I can get myself out of life is to engage in prostitution or escorting or whatever.
Selling the body or
selling their body.
Something basic like that.
It's often called, what is it called? Like the oldest trade in the world. And it's like it's been done for thousands of years. And it's like, well, obviously, as humans, we have yet to kind of create a civilization where people don't need to do that. And obviously, like, I know in the States, for example, I think they recently legalized it in parts of Los Angeles, and suddenly there was a huge uptick in the presence of prostitutes in the streets. But obviously what that says is that there are people who are struggling to get by, and the only way they see they can make money is through prostitution. You had this with OnlyFans as well, as where you have suddenly an uptick in OnlyFans accounts during the pandemic because people were out of a job, and it's like, I'm just going to sell pictures of myself and hope somebody buys them.
Yeah, but OnlyFans isn't that destructive because maybe
it's not as actively destructive. I think it's still quite passively destructive because the fact that you either sell a picture of yourself or you sell the physical version of yourself.
Yeah, perhaps. Mike, thanks for opening up.
Of course,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
the very interesting discussion about voice acting.
And alcoholism.
Well,
often two and the same.
It's been very informative, and I hope that it's as informative about alcoholism for my viewers as well.
Of course.
So if they have this problem and could address it, then I would be happy to help.
Yeah.
And about voice acting, it's fascinating. Your journey is very interesting. I'm happy that you're here sharing your experiences, both good and bad. And I hope that I would have loved that we'd talk maybe for 3 hours more if we'd had the tape.
If we have the time.
And
yeah.
the time, and it wouldn't be so awfully cold here.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you. Appreciate it. No worries.